Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to show you all the books that I have acquired since my last Christmas book haul that I will link in the cards up above. Now I actually bought 8 books myself since that book haul and I'm quite happy with that number, but I also got a lot of books. So a friend of mine has a partner who reads a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, but they are not really a collector, so every once in a while they do a big clean out, and as a friend, I was the lucky one this time. I got 60 books. Now, let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are here, but I'm actually not going to show all 60 because I watch book hauls to see what people want to spend their money on, what they're actually excited to read, either short or long term. So of those 60, I'm only going to show the ones that I actually was excited about beforehand, that I maybe wanted to buy myself, or the ones that weren't really on my radar, but after reading the premise, they now are. So let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. But I do have around 30 books to talk about, so without further ado, let's get into the books. And the first one is actually one that I have bought myself, and that is Master Artificer by Justin T. Call. Now, this is the second book in E-Quartet. I actually read the first one last month in January, so I will link my January wrap-up in the cards up above. That one was Master of Sorrows, and I really liked it, but this series is basically pitched as, imagine following the Chosen One, but he is destined to become the Dark Lord. And that first one wasn't as dark as I was expecting. Now, I have heard that this second book gets dark pretty quickly, so I am really excited to pick up this gorgeous book in March together with Joanna as a buddy read, and let's hope that it's as dark as I would like it to be. Now, next up, I have an entire trilogy that I got from that friend. Now, this wasn't on my radar until I recently heard that the author sadly passed away, and now I want to read it maybe in October because it really fits the Halloween vibes. That is the entire vampire series, I think the Vampire Chronicles that this is called, by Anne Rice. So of course the first one is the interview with the vampire. I think that this is the second one, the Vampire Lestat, and then the third one is called The Queen of the Damned. Now, I'm not going to read the entire trilogy per se in October, but at least the first one, and we will see how we get from there. Next up, I do have a book that I have never heard of before. This is the only one on the entire pile that I don't know what to think about, but I wanted to include it because I want to know if any of you have read anything from this author and if I should pick up these books or if I shouldn't waste my time. And that is the Chronicles of the Raven by James Barclay. So I have maybe 10 books by this author now. There's a dude with a sword on the cover, so it's definitely fantasy, but I have no idea what this is about, and 10 books, it's a big commitment, so if it's not really worth my time, I will probably donate them to a local bookshop. Let me know in the comments down below. Now, the next thing that this friend got me, and I was really so spoiled, this is actually something that I'm super excited about, because for Christmas, Steve over at Steve Talks Books, a friend of mine, he got me The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker. This is the first book in the Prince of Nothing trilogy, which is a grimdark +++ trilogy from what I've heard, and I really wanted to get in these books, hopefully this year, but who knows. However, I have heard that it's really difficult to get this trilogy in the same edition, so in this edition. Apparently that partner also read this trilogy, he didn't really want to keep them, so now I have. This is the third one, The Thousandfold Thought, and then also The Warrior Prophet, which is the second one in these editions, and it really looks quite nice on the shelves. They all look the same, they are the same height. I'm really pleased. This is also a really thick trilogy. I think that all of them are at the very least 600 plus pages, so I don't know when I will get to them, but now that I have the entire trilogy, I need to make work of it quite soon. Then we have a book that I bought myself, and it is When Jackals Storm the Walls by Bradley P. Bolio. So this is the 5th book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series, which is an epic desert-based fantasy with a lot of political intrigue. You have a revenge plot, and you have interference of the gods. So, of course, I'm going to love this series. I read the 3rd book in January, so I also talk about that one in my January wrap-up. And I now have the goal to finish the entire series before the end of summer, which is 6 books in total plus a novella. So this is the 5th one. I have the 4th one on my shelves to read next month, and then let's hope that I get to the 5th one pretty soon. Now, as you can see, the artwork is absolutely beautiful. I couldn't get my hands on the hardcovers, but if the paperbacks are this pretty, I don't really mind. Next up, books that I got from that friend of mine. So first of all, I got the UK editions of the paperback of The Way of Kings. So part 1, part 2. I am doing a read-along for this entire series. We are going to read The Way of Kings before the end of March. So if you want to jump onto that, you still have time, and we are discussing the books on my Discord, which is linked down below. So I now have these paperbacks. I'm never going to read from these paperbacks. I also have the US hardcover already. I'm not going to read from those either, because those are humongous. I'm actually reading the series on my ebook, but I do like to have pretty editions of series that I'm loving. And at this point, even though I'm not that far into The Way of Kings, I am really loving it. Now, I also got Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, so this is actually the second book. I have no idea what the order of these books is. I know that Way of Kings is the first one because that's the one I'm reading. Other than that, I draw a blank, but apparently this is the second book, and this is of course the UK hardcover edition. This is big. I have the US editions, and they are not that big. So I am a little bit intimidated to read this one when the time comes. It's over 1,000 pages. Wow. I really do like this. Normally I don't like white covers, but with the red, it fits. And I don't know if this is very easy to get your hands on at this time. So if they're even difficult to get new, and I got them for free, quite happy with that. Then they also gave me The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So this is one of my favorite series of all time, or at least the first one is. I don't really know what my thoughts were on the second one, to be honest, because it's been over 10 years at this point. But I read them in Dutch. And now I have this very pretty English editions of the first one. It's also, it's not like a mass market paperback. I think that this is trade. It's also not trade paperback, but it's a little bit higher as mass market. So I do want to reread this series, hopefully someday, and hopefully soon. At the very least, I know that I love Name of the Wind, but I actually don't know if I really liked The Wise Man's Fear. So let's see. But I do really like that I now don't only have these Dutch editions because I don't really read Dutch anymore. Next, a book that I bought myself, I actually already read in January. So again, watch my January wrap up, and I will probably have a review, dedicated review for this one up soon. And that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. So beautiful myth-retelling, Chinese myth-retelling of the Moon Goddess, but here we follow her daughter. Now, I actually had this pre-ordered a while ago, and then my copy didn't arrive. I actually wanted to have this edition, but it wasn't there, and I just ordered it again, and now I have it. So this is a different edition than the one that I previously wanted, but to be honest, both of these editions are beautiful. Let me know what your favorite is in the comments down below, but it's really very pretty. And the naked hardcover isn't that special, but you do have these birds here, which I quite enjoy, and green. We don't have enough green books, to be honest. And then these end papers are just very nice pink. So I'm very happy that I finally have this book. It's actually bigger than I thought because I listened to it on audiobook. Highly recommend. I will have a spoiler-free review for this one up soon, but highly recommend. Next, I got a book that I already have multiple editions of from that friend of mine, and that is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Now, if you're unaware, I completely love the Realm of the Elderlings. The Farseer trilogy is one of my favorite series of all time, and I do have multiple editions of this book already. I have all of the Dutch books of the Realm of the Elderlings behind me, and I also have the Folio Society special editions just out of screen, but I do have a complete flip-through of those. If you're interested, I will link it in the cards up above. Now, I'm never going to read from this mass market paperback because I don't like reading from mass market paperbacks, but I am quite happy that I now have this edition because for favorite books of mine, I want to have multiple editions. That's just the way it is. Then a book that I bought myself, and I have very high hopes for this because I have Daughter of the Forest vibes from the premise, and that is Deerskin by Robin McKinley. Now, this is an older fantasy standalone. I think that it came out pre-2000, and in this one, we follow a girl who is the striking image of her mother. Now, unfortunately, that's also her downfall, or her biggest curse, you could say, because on the eve of her 17th birthday, her father comes and rapes her. Now, this is, of course, very hard-hitting, and I know that a lot of people will not want to pick up this book because of that. But I have read Daughter of the Forest, which is my favorite book of all time, and there you also have a rape scene that is very hard-hitting, and it shows me that you can also put that with a lot of care, and that it can elevate a book. So, I really want to read this. I have Daughter of the Forest vibes. I hope that I am not expecting too much of this very short book, only 300 pages, but we will see. Now, after that scene, she leaves the castle. She's also a princess, by the way, and she leaves with her dog, so an animal companion. I think that this will be very hard-hitting, but also just a great read. Next up, I have another book that I bought myself, and this is actually one that I will be reading in January, so I talk about that in my February TBR, and that is Temple of No God by H.M. Long. This is the second book in a series of standalones. The first one was Hall of Smoke, that I read last year and quite enjoyed. This is also a new 2022 release, by the way. So I will probably have a review come out for the first book, Hall of Smoke, and then the second one, so a dual review, to see if it's even better than the first one, because the first one was also a debut novel, and I could see some small issues that I had with it, especially toward the end, was a little bit convoluted, so let's see if this one is better. Another new release that I have, this is Pandora by Susan Stokes Chapman. This is a Greek myth retelling, but I think that it takes place in the 18th century, and it's a retelling of Pandora, quite obviously. I actually don't know anything more because I like to go into Greek myth retellings as blind as can be. So I know about Pandora's box, that's about it, and I don't want to know anything more before I get into it. But I am quite interested to see how a Greek myth retelling taking place in a more modern day and age, how that will look. Now, next up, I have a book that I will also ask a little bit of advice for, because that friend of mine gave me a ton of books by Hamilton. Now, I have heard that Hamilton is a little bit the Stephen King of sci-fi and that he has written a ton. And I think that I have 15 books of him now on my shelf. So yes, he has written a lot. I think that I will give him a try in 2023 because I already have quite some sci-fi on my shelves on my TBR for 2022 and I don't read a ton, but I am quite excited to get into his works. Now I have the entire Void trilogy, but I have heard that I shouldn't try to start with that because it's quite hard sci-fi, but I have a ton of his works. I have standalones, I have series, so please let me know if you have read anything by him, what I should start with, so that I don't make any mistakes. Next, I also got some English editions of a series that I quite enjoy, and that is, of course, The Witcher. So I got Blood of Elves, which is the first book in the main series, and then I also got The Last Wish. So if you don't know, I read the entire Witcher series in Dutch, and I quite enjoyed it. I know that not everybody does. Most people just love the standalones, and then the main series they don't enjoy if they read in English. Now, I want to see if it's based on the translation, and that just the English translation isn't that good, or that it's just that people don't like it, and I do. So I do want to read these English editions. So like I said, this is part of the short stories, but this is part of the main series, and see if the translation is really what's wrong with this. So please let me know if you're also interested in that, because then I can move that a little bit up on the TBR. Next, a book that I have bought myself, and I do think that I talk about this in my February TBR because it is on the TBR, so if you want to know more, check out that video. But that is another new release, The Amber Crown by J.C. Bedford. I do think that this is a standalone, quite excited for that. It's also not the longest book ever because it's under 500 pages with a pretty big font. But in this one, we follow the events that take place after the king has been murdered and the queen is now missing. And we follow three people. The bodyguard who had to protect them and obviously failed. We follow a witch, and we also follow the assassin who started all of this. So this can go either way. It sounds pretty generic. Maybe it's just going to be another traditional fantasy story, but it could also have a lot of political intrigue and mystery and stuff like that, and that I usually love. So let's see how it falls. Like I said, I am going to read it in February, or at least try to read it ASAP. If it's not February, then it's March. So you will hear my thoughts pretty soon. Then we have another book that I bought myself. I couldn't contain myself any longer, and I bought A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I actually wanted to read this third book in the ACOTAR series in February because Valentine's Day, but I'm not going to be able to squeeze it in. However, I do want to finish up this original ACOTAR trilogy as soon as possible because I want to continue towards the other works of Sarah J. Maas. And to be honest, I really enjoyed the first and the second one in this series. It's not really deep, it doesn't have a lot of meaning, it doesn't have a lot of political intrigue, but the romance is quite entertaining and it's just a fun read. So I'm happy that I now have this third book in these editions because now I think I have the entire original trilogy and then that fourth book that also came out in the same edition, and that makes my book collector's heart pretty happy. Then I have an entire series that I got from that friend yet again. This is Sci-Fi. I have a feeling that that partner read more sci-fi than fantasy, but that is Ender's Game by, of course, Scott... What's his name? I always call him Scott, but apparently it's Orson Scott Card. I have Ender's Game, and I thought that this was a standalone. Apparently it's not, but I have 4 of the books. And I think that there's actually 8 or 7, so I don't have the entire series. I want to read Ender's Game, and I want to read that second book, which is called Not Speaker for the Dead. They are not in the right order. Are they in the right order? Maybe they are. I only recognize the title Ender's Game. I don't recognize any of the other titles, but I think that you can read Ender's Game as a standalone. So that's on my radar. If I can read it as a standalone, that's something that I want to get to soon, because it seems like a pretty short book. If I can't read it as a standalone, if I need to read the entire series, it will probably take me a little bit longer. Let me know if anybody has read Ender's Game, by the way, because I think that it's an older science fiction novel, if I'm not mistaken. And I really did enjoy Dune, which is another very classic sci-fi book. So maybe I will love Ender's Game as well. And maybe it's completely different. I have no idea. And then the last book that I have to show you, and that is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. So this is dystopian. I think that that counts as sci-fi. I have watched the movie. I absolutely adored the movie and I cried a lot during the movie. So now I do want to read this one. Unfortunately, it's the movie cover. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but a free book, I'm not going to complain because yes, I also got that from this friend of mine who really spoiled me this month. So let me know if you've read the book and watched the movie and what the difference is if you liked one or the other more. So those are all of the books that I have to show you. It's a ton. I have this goal that towards the end of the year, I actually read more books than I acquired so that my physical TBR goes down. That goal definitely got a hit this month, but we will see how we do in the upcoming months. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts are and which ones you think I should prioritize. As always, I hope that you enjoyed the video and see you next time. Bye!